Hello, I'm an office worker and a wife in my mid-30s. I have a sister who is 10 years younger than I am. She is 23 and is pretty with a great personality. She is also an excellent student, scoring in the top 2% nationally on her SATs. This is all thanks to the genes inherited from our parents. I adore my younger sister. Since our parents passed away early, we grew up relying on each other. As her older sister, I raised her almost like a daughter. Even without that reason, she was loved wherever she went. A few years ago, when my sister was just 19 years old, she was taking classes in her first semester at university. At the time, I was preparing to marry my boyfriend, whom I met at work. My sister was now an adult and in college, and I thought I could start a new family. The day before my wedding, my sister hugged me and cried like a parent sending her daughter off to marry. She worried about me being mistreated by my in-laws or if they were strange people. But I reassured her that I, as her older sister, would not let that happen. I told her that even if they were strange, I would always be there for her. I reminded her that she could always come to me with any difficulties or hardships, and I would protect her like our parents would. And so I got married, and we set up our newlywed room at my in-laws' house. My husband and I decided to take responsibility for my sister's tuition till she graduated from college, so I had to save money. My in-laws were a family of 3. My mother-in-law, my husband's older brother, and my husband. At first glance, they seemed like an ordinary family. However, the problem was my brother-in-law. He worked at a telecommunications company and had a similar relationship with my husband as my younger sister and I did, despite the large age gap between them. At the time, my husband was in his early 30s, and my brother-in-law was in his 40s. My brother-in-law was in his early 50s. In fact, when I heard that he was in his early 50s, I was a little surprised. I was thinking that he was at least in his mid-50s. My brother-in-law was an old bachelor who had never even dated a woman. Because of this situation, my husband and mother-in-law were always worried about him. In particular, my mother-in-law would not hesitate to give her inheritance in advance if her son found someone to marry. She was even determined to prepare for the wedding, even if it meant taking on a lot of debt. I couldn't just sit back and watch. I remembered the teachings of my parents who passed away at a young age. Family difficulties require the family to work together. Since I got married, I also became a part of my in-laws' family, right? So I decided to help out too. You know, honey, how about setting up a blind date? I asked my husband. Why? He replied, is there anyone good here? I need to find out. I'm sad to see your mother worrying all the time. Are you thinking about remarriage? I asked my brother-in-law. What? He responded, even though you're getting older, this will be your first marriage. It would be rude to set you up with a divorced or widowed woman. Huh? I said, grateful for my husband's concern. But I'm afraid that if something goes wrong, it'll be awkward for both sides. Rather than worrying about it every day, let's look into it first. There will be a good woman out there for you, my husband reassured him. And so, from that day on, we set out to find someone who would be a good match for my brother-in-law. I did my best to contact and inquire about any relatives of friends, acquaintances of seniors at work, and acquaintances of acquaintances. I also made sure to check if the potential match was a good person without being rude to them. But it was strange. My mother-in-law, whom I thought would welcome the idea of a blind date with open arms, reacted very lukewarmly. I wondered, did she have someone special in mind for my brother-in-law? If so, it could be very unpleasant for her to see us trying to find him a match. So I asked her directly, do you have someone in mind for my brother-in-law? She responded with a lukewarm answer, followed by a strangely expectant look. My husband and I were at a loss due to her reaction and her gaze full of inexplicable expectations. After much worrying, I finally mustered up the courage to ask my brother-in-law if he would be willing to go on a blind date. To my relief, he smiled broadly and answered that he had been waiting for this opportunity. That he would go. My brother-in-law also looked at my husband and me, just like the way my mother-in-law looked at us. At that time, my husband and I had no idea what the expectations were. We proceeded with a blind date as planned. But I asked her, did you not like anyone? Sis, do I have to say any words for you to understand? Is it right? No, I could tell because at first you didn't say a word and just drank coffee and got up to leave once or twice and you canceled last week, and today even. So, you have to let us know what was wrong with them so we can prepare for the next time. They were too old. I beg your pardon? Nowadays men are in their prime when they're in their 50s. When a woman is in her 50s, she's like spoiled food that has been left behind. You didn't say that in front of the other person, did you? I did. Wasn't that okay? Oh my lord, I'm disappointed. I didn't know you were that kind of person. If I had known, I wouldn't have set up a blind date for you. I was shocked. I contacted each of the women on the other side and expressed my sincere apologies for my brother-in-law's rudeness. They forgave us, saying it wasn't our fault, but even though we were forgiven, we felt sorry and ashamed. In particular, my brother-in-law's comments about the woman being 50 years old made me very angry and I couldn't ignore it. It was not because of our reputation. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, it was a very cruel thing for a person to refer to another person as spoiled food. So I was angry. My husband and I, who were worried, completely stopped looking for a woman. For my brother-in-law, I couldn't even dare to introduce anyone anymore. Even if things were going well and he was getting married, I was more worried about what would happen after marriage. My husband and I were already making a big mistake just by connecting anyone with him who had wrong values about women. Notwithstanding that my husband and I stopped setting up a blind date for him or not, my brother-in-law kept looking expectantly at us when he had no idea what he had done wrong. So my husband and I talked to him about everything, honestly. With that mindset he had, we couldn't find anyone anymore. My brother-in-law went into his bedroom, sulking, and as soon as he did that, my mother-in-law criticized me. Hey, are you that oblivious as a person who lives together in the house? Oblivious? What did I notice? Don't you know why your brother-in-law canceled and what does he really want? What does he really want? Are you talking about a young woman? Is it okay just because she's young? So she must be young and pretty too. He's very mistaken about that, Mother. To be honest, it's not easy to meet a good person of his age, but if you want a young and pretty woman, it's greed. And how could he see such a mean thing that a woman who is in her 50s, she's like spoiled food left behind. You are so dense. A few days of fighting passed like that. My mother-in-law kept persecuting me for being dense, but I didn't give in. I confidently confronted her, saying that it was not that I was dense, but that her son's values were wrong. I cut her off, saying that I couldn't carelessly introduce a woman to someone who had such values. Still, my mother-in-law's nagging continued, and my brother-in-law continued to give me expectant looks from time to time. No matter how stubbornly my husband and I insisted that there were no more chances left, my brother-in-law's expectant looks didn't stop. Then, he showed strange confidence, telling me not to worry because he would take care of it himself, but he continued to give me an expectant look. For some reason it felt strange. I felt an ominous energy from him. Then one day, very late at night, my younger sister called me out of the house. She rarely did anything like that, so I thought something had happened. Out of concern, I hurried out and saw that my younger sister started sobbing as soon as she saw me. First, I suppressed my worries and waited for her to cry as much as she wanted to. After a while, she hesitated and then spoke with difficulty. Do you know where I went today? It was a blind date for marriage. Did you drink? Are you drunk? You know, I don't drink even a drop of alcohol. Then is it true? How old are you to do that? And it was not just a blind date for marriage. You know, sis, just looking at you, it doesn't seem like you went out because you wanted to. Who was it? Who was the crazy person who set it up and sent you? You, professor? Are you telling me you went out just because you were told? Then what should I do? Your mother-in-law keeps pestering me to go out and saying he was a good person. At that moment, something sinister appeared in my mind. I really hoped it was not true. I couldn't believe it. On that blind date, it was my brother-in-law who showed up. I was so annoyed. I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back. No, the world fell apart. But once I was there, I had to get hold of myself, because I was a substitute for mom and dad to my younger sister. There was only one family in this world who could protect my younger sister, because there was no one out there. So I started by comforting my younger sister. She was so bewildered when she was so young and delicate. Her whole body was so cold. I felt like I was losing my mind in anger that I could hardly contain myself. Soon my husband arrived, and my sister told us everything that had happened. My mother-in-law had been secretly contacting my younger sister even before I got married, after the date when we all met for the first time at the pre-wedding dinner. At first she just said hello when she called my sister. My sister also thought it was an elder's thoughtfulness to call her as we lost our parents at an early age. However, as time went by, it became less like any thoughtfulness. My mother-in-law kept asking my sister about men, starting with, "Are you dating a guy? What is your ideal type?" In the end she said, "Love has no age or boundaries. Did you have any experience with men?" She blatantly revealed her true feelings, which was not appropriate to ask such questions, especially to in-laws and someone so young. To put it simply, my eldest son likes you, so she was asking if my sister would like to meet him. Only then did all the pieces fit together about my mother-in-law's and her son's expectations for me and my husband. The obscene greed that an old trashy person dared to harbor towards my younger sister made me sick to my stomach. My sister's next words broke my heart even more. The reason my sister endured hearing those sickening words was because she was worried about me. She was afraid that if my sister offended my mother-in-law, she would use that as an excuse to make me suffer. She was afraid and had no choice but to hide and endure it by herself. Even my sister was disgusted by the blind date with my brother-in-law. That is why she asked me for help. Listen to what I'm telling you. You have your best friend, right? The kids used to come to our house and play all the time. Why them? I want to report it to the police right away, but in the current situation, it seems difficult to charge him with a crime. I think you'll feel burdened too. First, tell them everything. It's not your fault at all, so don't be ashamed. And go on a trip together, as I will send your brother-in-law with you. You, go overseas anywhere. What next? What are you going to do? What if they do something bad to you? Have you already forgotten what I told you the day before my wedding? I'll continue to be your big sister. I'll protect you. I'm your older sister, but I also replace our mom and dad. It was an urgent priority to separate my sister from those unscrupulous humans. In a hurry, I sent my husband with my younger sister. After changing her cell phone number and sending her on a trip with her friends, without telling my immoral mother-in-law, I even prepared a place for my sister to stay and asked my husband to come back. Then I went to my in-laws' house alone. It looked like even those two had a rough idea of what was going on. As soon as they saw my cold, hard face, they tried to avoid me and run into their bedrooms. I shouted at them, "Is this why you found a young and pretty woman? Were you coveting my sister, who is only 19 years old? But I'm your mother-in-law, so speaking rudely like that is a bit harsh. What can I say in this situation? I came here after hearing even more bullshit words. Does it have to be bullshit? To put it bluntly, your sister is a female and my eldest son is a male. So if they feel like it, they can live under the same blanket. Why, even legally, there's such a thing as double in-laws." What? Double in-laws? That's only when they're in love with each other. You have to accept that this is what happened. I'll ask her to postpone the plans for my grandchildren until she graduates from college. Shut up. How dare a 50-year-old man who has spoiled food left over eye my sister? He doesn't even know how much he's full of rotten smell to covet my innocent sister. Just a child? It wasn't easy for me to decide, but what can I do? This is how a mother feels. I don't know who decided what on their own, but I just know this one thing. People usually call that kind of thing crazy stalking. They say it's not the parent, it's the crazy person who does this. After I finished speaking, I said just one word to my brother-in-law. No, the lunatic who is 50 years old and a piece of trash. To you, it's not worth talking to you for a long time, you dirty bastard. I packed my bags and left my in-laws' house. I wasn't gonna have anything to do with those trashy people again. My husband was also on my side. After I went on a rampage and left, my husband also went to his mom's house and wreaked havoc all over again. He confirmed that he severed his ties with them. He had also completed all the missions I asked him to do to protect my younger sister. Could it be that a warning worked? Those lunatic mother and son were quiet for a while. Even after my younger sister returned from her trip, there were no usual signs. I thought the case was over like that, but those lunatic mother and son couldn't get rid of their dirty minds. It started with my mother-in-law. I learned that she started visiting my sister's school at all hours of the day. Even if my sister's friends chased my mother-in-law out, she shamelessly reappeared a few days later. My sister tried to report it to the police, but the police seemed to have no solution. This was because my mother-in-law had never directly harmed my sister. I knew it. The day I first heard about their heinous actions, I also expected that it would be difficult for the police to charge them and punish them. Still, I was very fortunate to have many friends of my sister to watch over her. Of course, I didn't intend to just suffer relying on them only. My husband and I bided our time. Then one day, my sinister brother-in-law gave my husband and me an excuse to counterattack. He illegally used his position as a telecommunications company employee to find out my younger sister's changed cell phone number and contacted her first. My husband and I were delighted. We were actually holding the cell phone that was in my sister's name. I opened her cell phone in my friend's name for my sister to use temporarily. I left a short reply telling my brother-in-law not to call and change the phone number again. As soon as that happened, he found out the number again and called. I gave a short reply telling him not to call me and changed the number about 10 times. Finally, everything was ready. A few days later, my brother-in-law must have thought that he was dressed in a sophisticated and useful way, so he was excited and left the house, dressed like he was from the 80s. This was because he had received a text message from my younger sister asking to meet and talk. I guess he mistook that day's appointment for a date. It was a very good thing. That text was sent by my husband and me. The moment he arrived at the meeting place with his wig flying, a barrage of flashes from the waiting cameras all flashed at him. He was so scared that he looked like a criminal standing in the photo line. Reporters poured out questions filled with criticisms and ridicule towards him. Is it true that you stalked your in-laws? Don't get me wrong, it was love. Please don't cover your face for the photo. Do you know that your behavior is shameful? We are really people. We love each other purely. I heard that was not true from the other party. She said you had a dirty mind and she felt as if it was killing her. Do you admit that what you did was a crime? He couldn't help but cower, and notwithstanding it was shameful or embarrassing, he started to cry. It was ugly, but I had no intention of stopping there. Then, don't you plan on going to a mental hospital to get treatment? Today's fashion is like that of a crazy old man. Please don't do this. This is a branded maker. What crime are you saying I committed? You are stalking a woman who was about your daughter's age, and you are saying that it wasn't your fault. Then, if you're confident, can we publish an article about this? Please save me. With those words, he ran away. How urgent it was, poof. He couldn't even bring himself to retrieve his wig that got blown away. My husband and I picked up his discarded wig with 2 fingers, as if picking up poopy toilet paper, and threw it into the trash can. Then we stepped in front of the reporters. Of course, the reporters were not real reporters, and the meeting place was not a press conference. They were all my sister's friends. They were grateful friends who listened to my husband's and my request to protect my younger sister from a lunatic. My husband and I gave money with our grateful hearts to my sister's friends. In case my sister's friends might feel burdened, I told them to go out and eat something delicious with my sister later. After the fake interview, my husband and I went separately to execute our next plans. I printed the photos my sister's friends had taken and went to my in-law's house. He was sobbing in his mother's arms until I arrived, but there was no reason to show any sympathy. As soon as I was faced with them, I threw the photos at their faces. They were very sharp, like slapping their faces. When they saw the photos, they were shocked. The photos were full of obscene images of my brother-in-law when he walked into the meeting place, dressed in an old-fashioned denim fashion. He was shriveled up like a criminal, suffering various criticisms and ridicule from fake reporters. In the end, he ran off in an unsightly manner and even his wig got blown away. Everything looked pathetic. The stunned looks on his face were so comical that I thought, didn't he pee? I was curious. I thought, if I had known this would happen, I would have brought it up. I would have brought at least some incontinence diapers. Congratulations. As of today, you guys have become the official scum of the year. So this isn't a house, but a trash can? How could you be so rude in front of your mother-in-law? I guess this isn't the time to shout out loud right now. Well, if you were smart, you would have realized a long time ago that you weren't human and wouldn't have been stalking my sister in the first place. Why is it such a big deal that she makes my son so miserable? Misery? Don't be mistaken. We haven't even started yet. It starts when the article comes out. At that moment, they seemed to have realized something and quickly picked up the photos scattered on the floor and started tearing them up. It was laughable. It seems like you're ignorant and don't know because you're a 50-year-old who has spoiled food left over. But I could just get more copies of those pictures several thousand times if you tear those up. Is that so? I feel sorry. Please forgive me. If it were you, would this be forgivable? Well, okay, just say anything. What can we do to prevent articles from being published, like trash, stuffed in the trash can and live as if you don't exist? Don't come near me or my sister again. Think that you don't even have your second son. That's all I want. Okay, I promise. And finally, I warn you, I'm not one to avoid trash left on the street. Rather, I would just take it and throw it away. Even more so if you're a scum who throws shit at the people I love. Just in case, please refer to it. Just then my husband arrived, having finished his mission. My husband held a piece of paper he had brought with him to his older brother's chest with a rough gesture. When they looked at the paper, their faces went white in fear. My husband and my younger sister went straight to the police station and filed a complaint against my husband's older brother. He was accused of using his position as a telecommunications company employee to illegally obtain his sister's personal information and obtain her phone numbers. The paper my husband brought was a complaint receipt stating that my younger sister had filed a complaint against my brother-in-law for violating the Personal Information Protection Act. The devastated mother and son just sighed, and my husband and I, who succeeded in all operations, leisurely got out of the trashy household. My husband's older brother was fined. He was fined for violating the Personal Information Protection Act. This fact became known at work, and as a result, he was fired and is now unemployed. He is currently suffering from the worry that my husband and I might change our minds and reveal the photos and articles from that day to the world. I have decided not to tell him for the rest of my life, and I hope he lives in extreme anxiety until he dies. This is my punishment for causing anxious times for my beloved younger sister. Excessive attention, which no one wants, is a misery for that person. I also want you to know that it is a crime. I am in my mid-30s, and my younger sister is in her mid-20s. Despite experiencing terrible events, my younger sister graduated from college early and is currently staying with us. I am finally at peace knowing that my sister has found a man who loves her more deeply than I do. I sincerely hope that my younger sister, who has gone through something bad, will live a happier life. Thank you for listening to my story. To those who have listened, I hope you will always be happy. Please cheer for me and share your words of wisdom in the comments section. Pressing like and subscribing is a big help to me. Take care.